finish off the work that we were doing before we could say, well, yes, we are reasonably comfortable. You might remember that we had been through the early sections of the document, the introduction, the basis and aims, and we were into the section where we were dealing with the details of the policy framework. We had been through the infrastructure priority, and we were towards the end of the second priority on internet technical operations. Let me say, what is it called? Yes, internet technical infrastructure and operations management. And we had gotten down where we were talking about cybersecurity, as we had called it yesterday. And just after the technical and operational standards, we had gotten to this point here, where yesterday, as can be seen, oh, by the way, my screen is up. Yes, it is. Let me expand it a little more, if I can. There you go. Right. Yeah, we had been at this section where we were talking about cybersecurity and spam, and based on interventions from the floor, we noted that today's usage of the term cybersecurity tends to be more of a national level activity rather than an end user level activity. So the way that I propose to resolve that issue is that we rename this particular key issue from cybersecurity to information system security, so that we are all clearer that we're talking about the specific technical systems that we're using, and more the technical issues rather than the more global, national, or administrative, cooperative type of issues. So, having done so, and this is what I'm proposing now, we've changed it to information system security. The first policy recommendation here talked about cybersecurity. And this now would become more relevant to the priority area below, which is called legal frameworks and enforcement. So this particular priority recommendation is relocated down to the following section, which we'll see in a short while. So to resolve the issue identified yesterday, we're changing from cybersecurity here to information system security. And similarly, in the relevant priority recommendation, we're also changing it to information system security. All right, and that would take care of basically the comments that were mentioned on the side here. There's a little bit more to add, but I'll discuss it when we get down to the next section where it was reinserted. So what we'll be left with here in this information system security section would relate to applying good practices for the minimization of security vulnerabilities in network operations generally, local networks as well as national networks. And there are standards for information security that can be used as reference for developing the particular policies and good and best practice guidelines. This would be relevant to all stakeholders because it's not just, it's relevant to everyone who is using these information systems and the internet. The recommendation after that is okay to remain here because it's really talking about identifying international technical best practices and so on, but mainly technical. And again, it will be relevant to all stakeholders. The alignment looks a little bit off, but once one cleans it up, it'll look okay. All right. But I'm just using this particular view so you can see easily where the changes would have been made. Down again, changed from cyber to information system security. And reword this last section on promoting public awareness of information system security related practices. Oops. Okay, this last part would no longer need to be here. You're keeping tabs, okay. No one is complaining as yet, so we'll go ahead. And this is the section below that I was talking about, legal frameworks and enforcement. And there's a little chapeau part that goes before the actual table of recommendations. And there was, let me just close this down. So, there was a suggestion to introduce the idea of evidence-based policy formulation as a driver, and that has been done, put into the text. A suggested rewording here, and the old wording has been updated, consistent with the suggestion. In this part, the second part, it reads protected rights, including the rights to freedom of expression and so on. A suggestion was made that maybe we should say human and fundamental rights could be explicitly cited here. Reading on, my suggestion was that let's include it in the priority recommendation under the legal frameworks area, so you'll see where the reference would have been put in. So the rights here are more general, right? Yes, a question in the room.
I have a question. Sorry. Can I suggest that we add the word human, cultural, and other, right? The rest that you have? Because it's, I think now culture is so core to everything that we're discussing that we surely should emphasize it. Thanks.
So what would we say? What? Human, cultural, and fundamental rights?
Fundamental human and cultural rights, because fundamental would be the core.
Okay, fundamental human and cultural rights. Okay, just hold a thought, and when I get to that point, just make sure that we do it appropriately. Right? It's in the table. A comment had been made in terms of the earlier version. It didn't appear that these rights, although they were mentioned here, were in the among the key issues of priority recommendations. And I've noted that adjustments have been made to mention the rights in the priority recommendations. And the second part of that comment was saying that we also should consider matters related to inclusion and accessibility, especially the policy and legal frameworks that could better support these areas. And like discussed yesterday, adjustments were made to mention rights in the priority recommendation. Well, no, as mentioned yesterday, the second part of the comment, accessibility and inclusion were dealt with under section 311 on connectivity. We put it in that section.
And Nigel, we also have one comment / question. Following the second half of this morning and from the last 2 days, to include people, you need to give them responsibility. So wherever possible in the policy document, citizens / users should have stated obligations.
So like in primary action by, we haven't used that terminology, citizens and users. When it's each and every one, we've just said all stakeholders. So there may be some instances whereby we could use that, we could consider that terminology. What did I say now?
Or when you define all stakeholders in the glossary or the definition of terms at the beginning, you could also include it.
Okay. I like that thought. Let's put a comment here. Okay. As a possible way to deal with that. Coming out of the discussions this morning too, there was another idea that for inclusion that we haven't actually dealt with in this in the policy framework to date, and the SG is in the room right now, but I'll kind of depend on him to bring that up. If he doesn't, I'll mention it. Right, so I think we've dealt with the comments that were on the side here, and we're getting into the actual policy recommendations now, and keep me honest in terms of what we have here. So I've brought down cybersecurity and cybercrime into this section, and the initial priority recommendation related to that that was up higher up in the technical section has also been brought down here, which is here. Ensuring coordinated and sustained national and regional approaches to cybersecurity and related threats. Let me just make sure the comments here have been covered. They should explicitly relate to developing national cybersecurity strategies and contemplating at a minimum policy and strategy responses. So the policy and strategy responses are in the 2 bullets below it. Legal and regulatory frameworks, cybercrime, data protection, etc., technical expertise. Those are covered lower down in just 2 blocks below, where there is a kind of a list of the just bring it up. Right, where there's a list of the types of legislation that or the suite of legislation that we are supposed to deal with. Your comment is here?
On cybersecurity, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks a lot, Nigel. I hate to disrupt this, but not disrupt it, but I have some new information I wanted to suggest to the framework, which deals with endorsing and promoting the UN's cyber norms. This would have come out just a few years ago. The UN has 11 cyber norms for responsible behavior online, which would encourage states to act in a particular way. And let me just give you a quick run through as to what they address. Interstate cooperation on security is one. Consider all relevant information, prevent misuse of ICTs, cooperate to stop.
Interstate?
Yeah, between countries.
Between countries, right, okay.
I think they all add for the sort of conducive or good cyber hygiene, that term that Tracy had used the other day, as something that positive that we should all endeavor towards. So it doesn't necessarily translate into concrete laws that need to be enacted, but it sort of denotes or give a framework for the sort of ethos and the types of activities we want to collectively work on as a region. And again,
what's the name of the document?
The suggestion I have here is to endorse and promote the UN's norms. They call them the cyber norms, but I'll give you the longer name. The UN's norms on responsible state behavior in cyberspace.
So that would be like another recommendation we had.
Yeah, because it is really targeted towards governments to ensure that they do this. For the most part, our geopolitical setup is not one that is very problematic. But
okay, give it to me again, please.
Endorse and promote the UN's norms of responsible state behavior in cyberspace. One of them that I like in particular deals with the protection of critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure refer to all of these underlying systems that are now infused with some digital element, but are very important for our livelihood, for our economic survival, for our day-to-day operations, your road networks, your water system, electrical grid, etc. So I think the norms in themselves, I don't know if you want to put a anchor or something to that document.
The
But
relevant
once
document,
you,
yeah, like a link.
anyone in the room, once you have a look at those norms, I think we can collectively agree that those are principles that we would all want to be, have agreement with and promote.
Okay. Comments, folks? All right, we have it in there. I've put it in. I'm not sure is exactly the place I wanted to put it in, but it's recorded, so it may or may not move from there. So that starts with cybersecurity and cybercrime. Okay, legal frameworks.
Just to add to what he's saying, maybe you might want to be that specific, or maybe not, or add to that and other, rather than just that specific document, because in the UN system now there's a lot of emergent new rules and regulations as well. So you can add an other, and other instruments and mechanisms or what have you to that, rather than just be specific on one.
There's the new UN convention that the Caribbean has to understand. Well, besides the AI working group, the new convention on, informally it's called New Convention on Cybercrime.
Right. So that's what I mean. Yeah. So it's still an emergent field. So
name.
Rather than lock it down to one. Yes.
Yes. So endorse and promote international norms international norms for responsible behavior in cyberspace, and maybe we have a list, right? Okay. All right.
So the Caribbean agrees that we're not undertaking cyber warfare and subterfuge and all these things. I don't think we have room to do these kind of things anyway, but
in the whole process of the system, they would have to ratify and all that, all the whole jazz, which takes forever.
All right, I'll see if there are others. Good. Relevant.
Because it probably also wouldn't be just state, it would also be private sector and all the other actors, social actors. So they would have probably different layers.
Yep. Okay. I'll think with that. Now this, okay, I see there's a little support online. The other section was, the other key issue is legal frameworks and enforcement, and these were existing from before. Let me see if I could see what were the relevant comments here. Kevin Swift. We should include, develop an e-commerce protocol for the Caribbean pursuant to Article 3239. Yes.
That's an outstanding position.
That's what?
An outstanding position since the revised Treaty of CARICOM. In 2001, the Caribbean agreed that we would develop a protocol on, and the first issue that had been highlighted was e-commerce. And in 2023...
We still waiting? Okay, I wanted a little more clarity in terms of it.
But I think, if I may, it helps with some of the big arguments you're having in international space on data governance, because data governance is being shaped more so by trade agreements and trade lines. So data governance, for instance, would say, well, we want to do trade with your country, but we don't want the European approach because that's too bureaucratic. We want, for instance, to have more of a US approach where we could have access to certain types of data because innately we believe in, predicting what the customer wants and providing services at their fingertips. Now, it's really up for us as a Caribbean community to understand, where do we find ourselves philosophically in this data equation? Are we more about protecting our data as a human right, or are we more about, let's give free enterprise all the reign and they can manipulate things to a particular extent, providing that they don't infringe on X, Y, and Z? It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think we have actually pinpoint that. I haven't seen it here, but you go to a Caribbean meeting and there's a sheet outside with everybody's data, and you could just
Right.
take a photo and walk out. So
Yeah, you can.
it's just
They
to
can.
raise the awareness that we have to be a bit more considerate as to where we are in this data protection, data spectrum world.
Right. Now, that data protection comment is somewhat captured in here because we need to establish the supportive and enabling legislation and regulatory frameworks to govern the conduct of e-transactions and data security and protection and privacy. There is a UN General Assembly resolution related to that. But we don't have something specifically mentioned related to that CARICOM protocol. So and I was looking to see if maybe there was some place under content that we had dealt with it, but it doesn't seem that way. So maybe I could just stick in a particular recommendation in this section.
Yeah, because again, the e-commerce slant is that you have trading blocks. They want to tamper with how you look at data. They probably have a conversation on electronic transactions, and probably agree to particular operational type protocols. But I think the data question is one of the biggest ones. I mean, I'm saying that, but e-commerce is much wider than that, of course. Understanding taxation rules. If you are a Caribbean business hosting your content outside of Caribbean shores, would that be impacted? So CARICOM needs to discuss e-commerce at a macro level that can meet what is happening at the micro level. Okay.
Let me see if
Christopher
I could
had one
deal
comment.
with that in some way.
I think it's related to the e-commerce point, I'm assuming. He's saying it's caught up with the CSME implementation program.
Oh, that's
The
where
e-commerce
it is.
protocol, yeah. I'm assuming that's what he's referring to.
So this would be governments. As would be the case for most of the points in this legislation area. All right, so back up. Let's see if we've addressed the, oh geez, I have to find it back, okay. This is what we just dealt with here. Yes, it is. There was a comment, and I think this came from one of our workshops like this, to include the interaction of national spaces, for example, national IGFs in policy formulation and development of the national legislative agenda. We didn't have a specific reference to that. I'm not sure where that could be properly incorporated. So let me just leave that one for the moment.
Nigel, just a point on the data conversation. I know you had put that point somewhere. Lika is saying that on data protection and privacy, there is a newer resolution on the right to privacy in the digital age that happened in 2020, and there's also one expected to be adopted this year.
Okay, maybe you could ask if she could send the references to me, and we'll kind of update that reference. Too far? Where am I? Here. Second comment. Updated references to be received. This is Lika from thing, yeah?
Coming right up.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's Lika right here. I thought she wasn't here. All right, so that's fine. That's wonderful. We could we'll put them in. There is one, I wonder if I could highlight that in some way. That I need to remember to come back to. Yes, this one. Let's see if I can find a way. Nope. Yes, right here. Yes, Keron.
Thanks, Nigel. So, if I may, I truly appreciate that comment about the impact of the national IG spaces on the national legislative agenda. I don't think that, and this is just for clarification's sake, that would mean converting national IG spaces into the legislating spaces, but certainly
No.
there must be some sort of mechanism by which this exercise of multiple stakeholders, it is taken on board in a serious manner when the legislative agenda is set, and that for the legislative agenda for digital issues has further iterations and further instances of encouraging multi-stakeholder participation, accepting that government has the responsibility to set policy and legislation for people, but those who are closest to the knowledge of a particular issue may not be within the government sector. It may be either with the private sector, with end users, etc. So it's to encourage the exercise of more open and transparent policy making for digital issues. So I don't want to talk too much about this IGF plus idea of the policy acceleration. You know, there was an idea that after an IGF, they will move about the outcomes to the various agencies. I don't want to talk about that too much.
Yeah, that's still evolving.
Yeah. But somehow, when we discuss here, in addition to seeing our updated document, there must be something that goes to attorney generals, whether it's a bulletin, whether it's something that goes out to these departments after this exercise that we do here. And then hopefully with the CTU and other partners' support of national IG spaces, they can agitate at the time of digital policy to say, hey, these are some other considerations you must take on board.
Okay. I'm looking at this last comment on legal frameworks here. Assess, customize, and appropriately adopt recommendations and modelization developed in the HIPCA days. I know some of the countries have done that. They've taken on board aspects of this model legislation. I mean, a lot of it might still be relevant. I can't say I've assessed the extent to which that is the case, or if there are updated guidelines that we should better point them to.
Just as a general comment, because HIPCA was dated 2012 and we're in 2023,
yeah, it sounds
we can't
old.
blindly refer to it. HIPCA, I would say, is one of the best exercises in the Caribbean for policy research, but policy contexts evolve. So we'll have to work on top of that.
Yeah. Maybe update. Assess and update rather than whatever. It could still be relevant, yes, but oops, let's take that back. I'll assess and appropriately update. All right, because it is, as you say, dated. It's quite possible that we put the interaction with NIGF somewhere here, but as I say, I'll come back to it. I see a hand.
Yeah, I just want, can we just add the word continuously assess, since the environment is changing so rapidly, you know, so they keep abreast of it at all times, continuously assess and update.
I like that. No laws on bookshelves.
Yeah, because it ends up there 10 years later and you see, oh, okay, we did update, you know.
So rather than appropriately say continuously.
No, add continuously.
Add continuously in front of us says.
Uh-huh.
Continuously.
Oh, in front of here. Ah, right. Okay.
No laws collecting dust in this one.
All right. Good. We talked about the list or the suite of legislation that needs to be mentioned. And actually the last bullet in this suite is e-commerce, e-business, e-government. So I think it's quite appropriate to stick in the CARICOM e-commerce protocol right there. Okay. We updated the text based on the comment on the side. I had asked whether we had any reference, maybe a GDPR or any research, but maybe we shouldn't mention GDPR specifically.
There
are a couple things here actually.
Yeah.
Links, UNCTAD, and CARICOM impacts as well. Okay, I have to admit that I don't recall our assessment on these two links.
There's also another link that Javid just sent on data protection. Commonwealth Secretariat has the model provisions on data protection. So
Who just sent?
Javid.
Oh,
So
yeah, I guess it's Javed here.
yeah, so we'll forward that to you.
Oh, was here?
To your
Yeah, he was
left.
here this morning. Right. Oh, yeah, he is. All right, yeah, he is. I was looking here.
There's one piece again there that I think could be explicitly stated. It's an UNCTAD document, the use of electronic communications in international agreements. That will really help provide a framework for what would be sign-in rules. How do you find place of habitual residence, the electronic equivalent to that? Postal rules in a digital world. It really brings a lot of clarity to the contracting process online. And where we can have clarity in the Caribbean, that would be a tremendous benefit to all of us.
Okay. I'll say add additional references discussed in CIGF workshop. All right. Yeah, as I say, I have a couple things on the side there that maybe I'll see how the best way to incorporate them in. All right, so we stuck in the CARICOM one, the CARICOM reference. Dispute resolution, we didn't have too many different comments there. We have some additions based on actors, CAHO and OCCBA. So no real controversy there. In terms of cybercrime, actually, I might need to just call this top one cybersecurity then, or merge them in some way. Because if I'm saying cybersecurity and cybercrime, we could probably put them together. Because here is where we talk about the specific cybercrime protocols, Budapest Convention, UN, and so on.
So although cybersecurity could be seen as a concatenator or subset of cybercrime, I think it's worth having this explicit breakdown of some of the cybercrime actions to encourage, because some of them are really essential to making any sort of dent of cybercrime. With the Budapest Convention, I think the first part there is making sure you have comparable definitions. That's the first thing that needs to occur. Then you get into the sort of procedural elements that we want with law enforcement to be able to have a classification of types of data that should be available under short request, types of data that should be preserved in a urgency meeting, and then what you want later on for the judicial process to take on board. So I see a lot of value of having this as a separate section. It's very intricate per se.
So what would we call the key issues? Cybercrime, international cybercrime protocols, maybe? International cybercrime protocol?
On the top, you will still call it probably national cybersecurity. Probably this would be a good place to talk about cyber hygiene, and then have
on top or on this place? On top.
But
right.
this here, it really points to the core pillars of what should occur to improve cybercrime in the Caribbean. And you see the respective breakdown of the actors as to what their responsibilities are. I'm going back to a point someone made before about end users. At some point in here, there needs to be an indication that some people who are not government or not a particular subset here have a responsibility for promoting cyber awareness, good use of the internet, etc. So, meaning that's what you call it.
Who would be an example of that?
So for culture of cybercrime, cyber culture, that is a shared task among academia, civil society groups, associations of all types. A culture of cybersecurity really makes us aware what cyber security is on the one hand, good hygiene, and what cyber crimes are, and the possible impacts of those crimes, how they affect our security, how they affect our rights, how they affect our investments. But I think I have detracted from the main point here. Cybercrime should be broken down like this, yeah.
And Carol agrees that it should be kept separate.
Okay. So maybe add some of what you were discussing with cyber hygiene.
Cyber security and cyber hygiene on top. Yeah.
Right.
And we see cybercrime come in the natural flow of it. Oh, and yes, Carol is suggesting cyber behavior.
Oh, that was a chat that came up?
Yeah.
Yes, another
I
comment.
think cyber hygiene is
a
reasonable term to use, because it's the preventive stuff, you know? Yeah. So you have to train people, you have to have the proper equipment, security things, and so on. So processes and so on. So, all right, cybersecurity and cyber hygiene, and we'll deal with cyber crime, where we're talking about the protocols. I passed it already. Right, here. Comments were made that we include the UN mention of the UN Convention, which has been put on. It doesn't exist yet, so I call it emerging. And they also CARICOM developed initiatives through CARICOM impacts. Right, so I call it CARICOM developed because we have a specific one now, but we leave open the possibility of additional ones coming through. I haven't had any other significant comments on the ones that are here.
So I see something that is missing from the cybercrime section. And I think it needs to be explicit, and it deals with continuous capacity building. So as fast as law enforcement and technical people learn to overcome and prosecute the crimes of the day, the criminals are faster in coming up with new ways of conducting bad activities online. And the criminals are also empowered by, I hate to say this term, AI. So it puts the responsible actors for keeping us safe at a huge disadvantage. And therefore, there needs to be understanding that it's not a one one go sort of approach to capacity building. It's a continuous, lifelong dedication. Institutions need to be configured to support that.
We have a statement here. Continue this one. Maybe, I don't know if we could develop this a little more.
Right. So,
This one.
Yeah, we could develop that a bit more because, interestingly, in the capacity building question, you have now, with the second convention to the Budapest, inter-jurisdictional support, where one country and their team may not have the particular or the possible capacity to collaborate and to help with a cyber issue. They can call on the support of another thing. So, previously it's all about jurisdiction. You can't cross jurisdiction and interfere in the matters of another.
Yeah.
But for cyber purposes, under the second convention, which specifically looks at improving collection of e-evidence, is also improvement of collaboration in the actual cyber investigations. So I think that sort of understanding that it needs to come out, it needs to be explicit. It's a capacity challenge. We in the Caribbean, we know that we have capacity challenges, and therefore we need to explicitly state how we would like to address some of those capacity challenges.
So are you talking in maybe education and shared learnings?
So education and shared learnings
learning.
is one.
Yeah.
Actually being trained, right now the big ticket item is ransomware. Actually being trained to be able to address ransomware is another.
But then training
And then in
education.
addition to that, you need collaboration when the actual crime happens. So it's like 3 different layers.
But-
Education is nice. Education's at times a piece.
Yeah, but then maybe you need to separate the points though, rather than load it all into one.
Probably, yeah.
Education.
Training, education, capacity building, and sharing
And then-
learnings.
And then
And
there's
then the other
active,
dimension.
active
The-
collaboration.
Yes.
The particular one above talks about leveraging, harmonizing, coordinating relationships and initiatives at the regional, Commonwealth, and global levels. Now, we said Commonwealth because we have been working through the Commonwealth as well. So, and this is governments, regulators. It mentions judiciary, doesn't necessarily say law enforcement. Law enforcement was a little higher up. Facilitate, encourage, and prosecute national and international efforts to control and prosecute cybercrimes. So, I mean, some of the things are there, but maybe we need to tweak them a little bit, like the education, continuous education, the what's the word? The coordination and working together is mentioned, and some of the organizations there from the policy level anyway are mentioned. We don't have the law enforcement in here.
Well, Nigel, Carol actually made that point with collaboration, that it needs to be cross-border. And she also said that there may be conventions we need to sign on to and not just be observers. And Carlton mentioned that we do have a big hole in effective measurement of frameworks. How do you measure digital transactions? Who's responsible and what needs to be available?
All right, so here what? We can't probably wordsmith this now. So what I would do is we'll get through as much as we can get through with it this afternoon. I think the rest of the sections, we should be able to get through in the time remaining, and we will, I think, have to. We'll clean up the document in terms of incorporating various changes, and we'll probably put it out again for people to put in help us with some of these specific wording, especially on this particular section.
And just one more to add to that section. Mutual legal assistance is how law enforcement requests information for cybercrime across borders, which is in the Budapest Convention.
Okay, so we have, but I mean, if we mention, remember the framework, is not a detailed. All the details wouldn't be in here, But we need to mention the appropriate things we need to use and what the kind of overall objectives would be, right? So we have to kind of keep the references at a high level.
One last point, if I may, before we move on, please explicitly write law enforcement. Where you have judiciary there, please explicitly write law enforcement.
Okay.
In that section and the one above.
Law enforcement and where we have judiciary here.
Yeah. No, I think law enforcement is there if you go.
Oh, higher up,
So
yeah.
it's just missing
Right. True. Correct. But it's not in the second one.
Right. Okay.
All right. Do another enter. All right. Certification, what did this relate to again? Oh, digital certificates. That's what it is digital certificates. So I think this was okay. We didn't have any comments there. So then we get to content, local content. There was a general comment here that I didn't actually find a way to incorporate, which is that valuable content which may be unique to the region and therefore appropriate for Caribbean development is stored by civil society organizations, not necessarily in a national archive or something of this sort. So by civil society organizations which do not possess the capacity and capabilities for digitization. Suggestions, more specific reference in action columns with some examples and cases. I wasn't quite sure that last part of the thing was suggesting. If maybe we include civil society organizations as part of the ones that hold. There was a recommendation for digitizing content. Let me see if I look lower down. Right, digitize and it says digitize and backup national archives, records, historical reports, and local media content. So maybe, it says local. Let me get the alignment on this here. Yeah, it has regional media houses and governments. Do we have to mention civil society organizations separate to that? Because the regional...
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, can you, because that's the big gap that we need to address. Because the records and material is scattered all over the place, right? So we need to itemize the broaden out beyond the government institutions and the media institutions to incorporate all these others. It would include civil society and individuals, and there are also international institutions that hold our material as well. So we need to capture that in that recommendation, or if we want to break it into different.
So it is...
It's not only the official organizations, they are not only organizations.
So I could put in the civil society organizations.
Civil society and individual repositories.
Individual what?
Repositories or libraries as well.
I don't know what...
No, well, support. Remember,
those
you're
would be.
talking about supporting digitization.
Yes.
So it's not in terms of a legal thing, but just to extend the reach. In fact, most of our stuff is not within the national organizations.
How would those individuals judge what we need to digitize or whatever, though? You know, what is worthy of those types of that type of archiving record?
Nigel, also a comment on the content. There's also the potential for diversity of languages with content.
That could be another point. It could be multilingual.
Okay, so I think they would have to help me with which area that might have to go into. Oh, and I just remembered, you mentioned human and cultural something.
Yeah,
I passed this section. Let me see if I could find it back here. I know what happened. Yeah, the section where is rights, right? So it's right here. Let me find, make the thing. Right, channel direction, human rights. So it was what? Fundamental, fundamental human and cultural rights. Fundamental, I'll pass the cultural first, yes. Yes.
Turn on autosave.
Oh, wow. No, now it's off. There, leave it. Okay. Yes, fundamental. Oops, where am I now?
Yes, fundamental cultural and human rights.
Yeah. All right. So.
Question.
Uh-huh.
Is the intention of adding these words to limit the scope of the human rights that you're considering? Because that is what we were currently doing.
No.
Referring to fundamental human rights, that is less broad than human rights.
That's supposed to, yeah. I think initially it was fundamental rights, human rights as a wider attachment, and then as opposed to fundamental human rights.
Because just human rights is the broadest one.
It's the broadest one.
Fundamental human rights is more limited in scope.
Yeah.
And
Now that I think about it, I made a suggestion.
So
that I
take
had
off fundamental?
comma, human, and it should be actually the other way. Human, fundamental, and now we have cultural. It's done like that to put a particular emphasis on that category, but not fundamental human.
But you're not confining it.
Yeah, it's not a confine.
You're actually broadening it, but putting a particular focus. This comes out because there's a question in chat. Because the Caribbean is multicultural and
Oh, yeah.
diverse,
Mhm.
you really need to keep that in the limelight at all times. This recommendation, sorry. Yeah, this really speaks to the diversity of the Caribbean that we need to respect. And that is one of the sorely lacking areas that we are focused on. So some of the recommendations that are now coming through when we talk about content in terms of the multilingual environment and the multicultural society, and then we also need to shift when we talk multilingual, we think English, French, Spanish, the European languages, to broaden that out into the indigenous spheres of the Creole languages and those other elements of the diversity. So I think that's why I suggested the cultural thing up front there, because we need to really flesh out this cultural arena in all the dimensions that are lacking in the internet sphere. Yeah?
What if I take off the word fundamental?
Nigel, there was a comment that says that the rights are fundamental, not the humans. Deidre
The
made
rights
that
are fundamental.
The rights are fundamental, not the humans.
Not the human?
Not the humans. That's a comment made by Deidre in the chat.
So if I take out the word fundamental,
Or probably just put commas.
fundamental rights, cultural rights, human rights. Okay.
cultural rights are human rights.
Yeah. But yeah.
I would suggest maybe human rights, including or in particular cultural rights.
Okay.
Okay.
If you put a fundamental, then you're restricting. Sorry, if you put a fundamental, then you're restricting it, at least in the legal sense, to things like the right to life,
Yeah.
things like that. So that makes it
So
a
just
lot
leave
more
it.
limited than the
Right.
things that we are currently talking about.
Correct. Yeah.
And Nigel Deidre also says fundamental qualifies rights.
So fundamental and human is would be my question.
I think human, including cultural rights, to put the highlight on cultural.
Yes, all right. I was trying to cut and paste it.
You unmuted me.
Ah, very good. Thank you, Deidre. That, if you could clarify.
My English teacher hat says that, sorry, there's a bad echo. Fundamental
Yeah,
human rights. The fundamental is qualifying the rights, not the human. So the human needs to be in a different place in that sequence to be clear. Is that any clearer?
I think I understand it.
Okay, thanks.
So you could identify fundamental rights, human rights, and cultural rights.
But we have some that are subsets of the others.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But
and we want to put emphasis on some of the subsets. So
yeah.
What was the word you used for the emphasis, particularly, or something?
human rights, including cultural rights, and all fundamental rights, human rights. Yes. So human rights, including fundamental and cultural rights. Punto final. I don't know.
I would think fundamental is like the basis,
put
foundational
particular.
rights, right? That would
Yeah.
be beyond human as well. It'll come in with things like environmental rights and what have you. So let fundamental be there at the front, then and human and cultural rights. Because when you just leave the human, you eliminating all those
Okay.
other, the environmental, non-human rights issues, right?
All right.
Rechild and protection, fundamental and human rights, particularly cultural rights.
Carol
it's-
Roach says human rights principles. And Nika, I see you're typing in the chat. You want to say what you're typing?
No, not principles, because we saying things that the whole thing says review and appropriately reform and harmonize existing laws with direct implications for internet governance related activities. So in other words, maybe that's not well worded at all. The thinking here is these things, these rights and so on that we enjoy outside of the cyber world, when we go on cyberspace and using the internet, we need to have laws that appropriately protect you. You know, you must have the same rights and protections online as offline. That is kind of the sense of what was the intention here. So we want to reform existing laws, basically to take account of the fact that we now also on cyberspace. So is the actual rights, it's not the principles, right? It's the actual rights that we want to protect. All right, I'll let that percolate for a while, and we'll come back. At least we'll take that in the next round, I would say. Digital certificates, I think we were okay with that. We were down at content, and we had dealt with putting in civil society organizations, or maybe
I think there was
and other content holders.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned that, I forgot that in another cap I wear, I'm one of 4 people in a loosely associated NGO that is preserving Trinidadian French Creole, aka Patois. So we're not a civil society organization. It's just 4 of us out of passion projects. And if somebody, aka National with Money, would like to contribute to that, that at least could be recognized, and digital tools can help preserve this for the benefit of the national community. Just saying.
Yeah, so and that is where we need to loosen up the system beyond the organizations, because a lot of the knowledge holders are not in any system. You know, knowledge holder, indigenous knowledge holders, there's a whole informal sector that isn't accounted for, that we need to take into account when we talk in content.
And it's the same thing with colleagues who do bushbury, try to preserve. It's the same situation for all of us. We're not CSOs, but
Yeah.
we're across the board.
Yeah, I think like bush medicine and all those things that come into it.
Yeah, it would be good to record those types of
Yeah, that's why we need to talk.
know-how. All right, so I'm looking for where there were comments. I think we are, so we're not bad with
Then don't forget also the international repositories that we need to have. Maybe I think it probably should be a separate point in terms of digital content, because of the colonial processes. A lot of our material elsewhere, we need to be able to have access to and have shared agreements and stuff like that to access them. So I think that is very, very important for us when we sit as researchers and what have you, to include it as a separate point under the content element. You know, to negotiate things like negotiate transnational agreements and things like that, so we can access those materials. Right?
So that would be high up. Promote and pursue the creation, packaging, dissemination of local content.
So one would, okay, so probably we need a point on, if you don't have it there, in terms of document retrieval, you know, information retrieval as well.
Yeah, we don't have that. Okay, so this case use local content development.
So we're looking for a
All right,
a
developing
transboundary.
local content. We have digitize and backup national archives, records, historical reports, and local media content.
Transboundary and intercontinental.
Distribution. Okay, so we would need some words. I think I'll leave you to.
Okay, promote. Let me give you a quick thing. Promote.
Action.
Yeah, actions to harness or to retrieve, to harness and retrieve extra regional knowledge materials. I can help you fine tune it later.
Yeah.
Right? That are vested in repositories, in international repositories.
Oh, I'll end up with held extra local cultural materials or something.
Regional, it will be regional.
Yeah, not good.
Let's take.
Would cultural artifacts be a subset of knowledge materials?
Yes, that's why I say knowledge.
So, all right, and you have
That's why I say knowledge, so because it will include physical museum material as well as knowledge documents and know-how as well. Yes.
bush medicine
Yes,
and all that. Okay.
yes.
Oral tradition. Okay.
And
Nigel, Deidre is saying to use the word discover rather than harness.
I didn't say
She's
harness.
asking where it should be used, whether it should be used discover rather than harness.
I didn't use harness. I didn't use harness. The proposed text is promote action. What did I just do there? To recover and retrieve.
Yeah, recover rather than discover, I would.
Okay, recover and discover. Okay. All right, I'm getting a little problem with, and who would be prime on doing this?
You mean you wanna? Oh, you mean in terms of allocation of? Well, it would be.
The action to recover and retrieve.
Well, it would be the governments at the top level, and then it would of course be the archival and academic institutions. But we don't want to leave it all in their hands. So I would like to expand that onto, because a lot of those indigenous knowledge holders, for instance, are not going to release their material to these organizations. So allow not just civil society, and I will keep saying individuals as well, because that's the informal sector that we need to tap into and make them feel comfortable with the process when they distrust all these other organizations, the governments and academia and what have you.
Academia, society, individuals.
Individual.
Oh, okay. I'm adding. You said academia.
Academia.
Civil society.
It would also be media, civil society, and individuals.
Yeah, because the individuals won't necessarily be under civil society. They want a separate treatment.
Still society?
And individuals, yeah.
Okay. All right. I was saying that I didn't have additional comments there. We have 22 minutes. We have one more main section to go through, which is public awareness capacity building, for which we didn't have a whole lot of comments. Something came up today. Oh, Mr. Taylor's in the room. He is. We have public awareness and capacity building. This is where we are here now. And from the discussion this morning, he was suggesting that we put in a section related to digital democracy or something,
yes,
sir?
digital democracy and citizen engagement. As per the discussion we had this morning. Oh, sorry, thanks. Yes, coming out of the session this morning on digital democracy and citizen participation, I'm saying that's a gap right now. I mean, we can put it there perhaps as a placeholder, understanding that I don't know if we should craft it now, but make reference to the need for a focus on citizen participation, or a democracy, digital democracy and citizen participation.
All right, let me put I'll put a comment. It
Yeah, it can be placed as a comment.
Public awareness and capacity building. We might even want to adjust this term a bit. New comment. Include a section, an item, digital democracy.
And citizen participation. And we can, I mean, reviewing the discussion this morning, we can pull some of the points that were raised to help flesh out the recommend.
In the document, and this capacity building is quite different from addressing the mess that is the education system. And somewhere in there, we should have some kind of focus where IT and education are treated as IT and education, but IT and education, that's something. So we need to have some points in there addressing education. And this is education, not just education in IT, but integrating IT as a human consciousness within the education system that starts from base. So this is much beyond the public awareness and capacity development of in terms of IT capacity, right? So I think maybe it should be a separate header for education.
Well, it's capacity building. So we could find a place in here if it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, maybe you can talk about the education sector, teachers, and
Yeah.
that whole
I
education
have a
infrastructure.
feeling that we did that before. Develop and strengthen appropriate regional sector and industry fora. It just broadly mentions curriculum development.
Well, maybe that needs to be, but curriculum is just one aspect of the whole education spectrum.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Okay.
it's revising the content within the education sector, right? Digital educational content, for
Yeah.
instance.
Well, we could probably beef that up.
Yeah.
As I said, don't
Flesh
necessarily
it out.
make it specifically curriculum, but the sense of what you're saying is integrating IT into the education
Arena, right?
arena.
So it's
Yeah.
not just
It's
curriculum
not just a
development;
curriculum.
it's also the digital educational content. I mean, for me, it's a vastly empty area because we haven't touched it. The education system's idea of digital education is turning everything into PDFs. I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
You know, so it's deepening that education approach. That's why I thought maybe a separate header and put a few points under there so that it can get some focus.
Well, you could offer some.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah. So, and there'll be an opportunity to do so. The comment you just made that I took a note of, I'll see if I could enhance this a bit, and when we circulate the document, you could review, right? Well, yes, we'll have to. Do we have to add your name to our current distribution list, or what?
I think you might have to add it.
You think I might have to add it? Okay. So, as I say, that's the only comment really that we have in this particular section. And then we on to the last part, which is research. We mentioned some of the emerging trends, emergent technological and market trends like artificial intelligence, the evolving cybersecurity and cybercrime issues, and so on. We've added that into the text. We don't have a lot of comments on this part.
Yes, I want to add something to research as well. We have to promote indigenous research on the thing. So far this speaks just to responding to material that's out there, and data is out there that is being generated from God knows where. We have to promote generating our own material as well and research. You know, that's another empty area.
Okay, the particular focus of the research here relates to our development, right? The basic status of development of our Caribbean Information Society. So this document, the vision of this document is to create this Caribbean Information Society. And what this research is saying here, well, you know, we really had to measure progress. So that's the first bullet there. Then second, the points relate to how the research is presented and shared, open data and all that sort of thing. And the third one relates to evolving technology. So identifies relevant technology and market developments and undertake relevant research studies to inform policies. So thing would fall under that. AI, for example, that we talk about would fall under that. So maybe the point you're raising, Chris, would be
add on there to promote and develop particular case studies and case stories that would speak.
I'm not hearing it.
The particular case studies and case stories that would feed into the research, that would support the research. Because when we do research, we tap into foreign data. We need to promote generating our own experiences to inform the research and development. I'm talking about that there is a gap there. Well, regional, like yeah.
regional data sets or something like that? Regional data sets, maybe?
Well, not data speak to a particular reality. I would say case studies and case stories, because we haven't captured the experiential element.
Okay,
You know, that would support the data.
right.
Yeah.
Lika, you were saying?
I feel like I'm hearing that there's maybe two parts to what you're saying. One part of which would go in the previous section about cultural rights and content, etc., and that would be the part where the indigenous content creation part would show up. And in that connection, I have a question about, because I noticed that there's a lot of talk about preservation and putting it online, but I didn't see an element of protection for indigenous data in there, or local and traditional knowledge that might be sacred or otherwise restricted or community held in a way that would ensure that it cannot simply be exploited by others. And I'm wondering if that's...
What kind of protection are you talking about?
That's why I put in the cultural rights, because within the cultural rights documents, there are protection clauses and stuff that would protect the indigenous knowledge. Yeah.
What kind of protection is that? Is that like intellectual property protection?
It's IP, but it's also like sacred rights. There are cultural rights, like for instance, there are groups that don't want their knowledge all over the place. You know, sacred knowledge, sacred practices and things like that, which the cultural rights protect. Those instruments for cultural rights would protect those.
Yeah, so there's in essence I suppose, different understandings of the value of putting your knowledge publicly, and that some knowledge must be understood in context. So it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing if you put it out there for everybody to see and to have. And so part of bringing that diversity to the online space is also having respect for the different understandings that different groups have of these concepts.
All right. Remind me before we end to make sure that we've captured that aspect, to go back up. But I really want to get down to the end here. In terms of the operational structure, there is some text which hasn't had comments on it. We've adjusted this particular diagram a little bit. There is a comment that this draft structure would call for dismantling of existing formal and informal relationships for CTU's coordinating function to be effective. And the suggestion was for a clear transitional period or timeline for this dismantling and re-engaging to take place. But I would want to suggest that it's not really a dismantling that's called for. So I'll get to it when I it's actually on the next page. It's the next diagram. So this is where the CTU Secretariat sits in its hierarchy. Up at the top here, it's a CARICOM institution, and the CTU Secretariat interfacing with other CARICOM institutions, stakeholder groups, and so on. Basically convening this particular forum that we are in. And out of this particular forum, we have the opportunity to create dynamic coalitions on anything. A dynamic coalition is a group of willing people who are interested in a particular topic that want to tackle it and study it, maybe propose policies or whatever. And this dynamic coalitions concept is something that is very, I guess, came out of the global IGF, the UN IGF structures. So we have provision for that in terms of our own operations. Here, we have no recent examples of a dynamic coalition being formed out of the CIGF. Not any long-lasting, not any enduring dynamic coalition anyway. Sometimes we might have had working groups out of a particular IGF that did something in a very short term. But the next diagram, which is the one that I presented in my presentation yesterday, essentially, the wording is a little different here and I'll need to make it more consistent. Up at the top where it says Internet Governance Institute of some sort, on the presentation yesterday it said a coordination mechanism. And one of the ideas that came out was a multi-stakeholder advisory group that we'll be evaluating shortly. And suffice it to say, though, that this, what is essentially on this diagram was on my future side, from and to. It was on the to side. And I think the comment about the dismantling of the current structure was that on the from side, CTU was up at the top, right? Yeah, this CTU was up at the top, and we go into a situation where we're creating some sort of mechanism, and CTU will just be one of the stakeholders within the CIGF going forward. So my comment is that it's not really any dismantling, right? What we really have to do is basically try and create a working mechanism up at the top, and once that's done, CTU will just fall into its appropriate role. All right, so I don't think any particular change was required for that related to that comment.
I think similar lessons. This is just a point of information for the listening audience and those in the room. A similar experience or evolution could be garnered from the CYIGF experience. CYIGF was born from LACNIC, another organization called NUPEF in Brazil, and APC, Association for Progressive Communications. And for a very long time, LACNIC was the secretariat and almost the be-all and end-all of the CYIGF. What we have achieved, it took a couple of years, but we now have a process where the CYIGF secretariat is multi-stakeholder, but it's driven by an organization that's elected for a particular amount of time. And therefore, LACNIC now is just one of other ordinary members in providing inputs as to what the next forum could look like. But it's really, we had to push for a long time to make it multi-stakeholder, to invite people not to just come and talk and eat, but to actually take up that agency, that responsibility to put forward ideas and lead the organizational components of it, and now it's a new configuration that's happening.
Right. Okay. So we have some precedent. Implementation strategy.
Before you move on, sorry, I saw you missed including there in your identification of stakeholders, individuals. I think it is important for the Caribbean because some of these islands are so small. You have to accommodate the singular expert that they would have.
We could do that.
Right?
We
So
could do
keep
that.
in
And
mind because of the size.
we say it all the time. Internet governance is open to everybody.
Yeah, but it needs to also be
individuals
in the
and
documentation
organizations.
because
Yeah.
when people take out things and say, "Oh, I didn't see
Right.
individual." I
Oh.
didn't see right.
End users. Is end users okay, or you want individuals? Individuals. Okay. Or maybe individual end users. Yeah, individual end users. All right.
No, but they're probably not all end users, and no, they're also
So, but
experts in the
the reasoning behind the end users is that we always want to push people to the digital, to the internet in any case.
Well,
so they are
individuals
individuals.
and end users.
Yeah. Some
Yeah,
individuals are not, but they
it's
should
as-
come over to the dark side.
As end users.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
you
the
get
that's the
roped into
concept.
dark side.
Your role is as an end user. You know, yeah. So, and as you say, they could be members of these organizations, but they also, as an end user, an individual end user in their own right.
No, but I'm also thinking of individuals who are not end users, you know, but they are not in organizations. Yeah, they're experts. They're specialists and experts as well.
Okay.
So so that's a group in addition to end users.
I don't follow.
Yeah, I follow actually. Because when we refer to end users, it's an all-encompassing term. Is anybody really?
Yeah.
Who uses it? But we're saying individuals may want to participate in their capacity as an expert or a specialist in internet governance or internet or information technology. They may participate in that, but they wouldn't rightfully be considered an end user, or that's not the type of end user
Role.
we're referring to when we say an individual.
Okay. All right. I think
You see what I'm saying?
I think I get the point. So yes, when I say end user, we certainly thinking that person at the computer doing something, but an individual might want to contribute at a particular level. That
Yeah, there's a concern here by Tracy as well about individuals. So once you put individuals in the mix, you will struggle with governance. So if you wish to formalize anything, informal, fine, but informal orgs. Yeah, so I think the discussion came up yesterday with the TTMIG and individuals and
Yes. Yeah.
So we're saying when we say end users and individuals, you're talking about anyone. Okay? And then
Yeah,
from
is
an
it really
organizational point of view or structural point of view, that is the difficulty, because now it's anyone, as opposed to you're representing an interest group. It could be, for example, if it's a civil society organization that represents end users, whoever they understand. It could be an NGO that, you have PWDs, you have all kinds of organizations that represent a particular interest. And the question is, in terms of governance, when you say end users, which is open to anyone, and you have 300-400 people coming to join this mechanism, how do you govern that? You want to be inclusive, yes, but is it governable?
Come on.
All right. So I totally understand that. I acknowledge Tracy's point about the governability of that. I think there's something that some of us who have been in internet governance for a long while, it's probably not reflected here, so it's what you call implicit knowledge. All of the stakeholder types in an internet governance forum, you could come with the hat with the organization that pays you, but there's also a duality of your participation as expected. You can speak in the name of the employer, but you can also speak in your individual capacity. And it's something that was very prominent. You have people taking the mic, well, on this matter, I'll speak as myself. And then the next time they say, no, on this matter, I'm speaking as the University of X, Y, and Z. All that to say that I think individuals have always somewhat been recognized, and then contextually, the Caribbean individuals probably straddle 3 or 4 of these stakeholder groups in any case. Probably it's the case for it to be explicit, or probably it's just the case to make explicit the expected conduct that you can express yourself as a stakeholder group or as in your individual capacity. I don't know if that would solve the issue of participating as an individual and having it named there, but all of these people, whether they're going in the name of academia, they can also speak on their own behalf. I think for government employees it's a bit more difficult because they need all these approvals and instructions and all the rest.
And that's my point. One is, well, I could give several reasons why. One is, if you're under government hat, you can't speak on your individual thing. Secondly, in terms of when you're talking about the creative sector, for instance, these are individually driven. And then, as I said, in terms of small islands, sometimes you have a specialist who doesn't belong to any of the organizations that you have under there, but it can be brought in terms of to contribute and to make some kind of difference. So, maybe if the word individual, you think is going to become problematic as a free for all, and you're trying to limit that, well then say specialists,
Deidre
or
asked-
experts or what have you, So
Deidre asked about the word independent. And Tracy made this comment. The reality is that individuals from their stakeholder group will, in fact, be the ones who will actually engage and participate.
I think so.
So further to that point, and I hate to be the devil's advocate, are there individuals who are not part of any other stakeholder group?
Yes. And I'm saying that because I work with grassroots people who are not in even grassroots organizations, and they have things to contribute. And I'm talking about that indigenous knowledge sector and the informal sectors that these things don't appeal to and they don't attract, and you
And they're not
exclude
end
them.
users.
Yes,
They don't
they're not a
have
nuisance. They want to
smartphones.
come in, they want to
So-
make a contribution without having to be bogged down by these organizational.
All right, so if I define in the glossary that we include individuals under when we say end users here, it includes individuals. Would that help? Yeah.
No, so let me just again going back to the discussion yesterday. This is not to say this mechanism really is a mechanism to allow us to continue planning and executing the Internet Governance Forum. the multi-stakeholder group or mechanism does not exclude anyone from participating in the forum itself. The forum is open to individuals. So, but we're talking about for the purpose of further developing the forum, the purpose of organizing, gathering inputs, which could be from anyone as well. But I agree that it is a bit problematic for individuals to be included in the structure. It doesn't exclude them from this discussion, for example, we're having today, and any future, forums that we have, and so on. But which is open, and which is why the forum is free, which is why it is hybrid, because they're and the policy framework itself goes out to public consultation, the development of the agenda, all of that. But this is just the mechanism through which we organize and plan. And I agree that we do have to put some parameters around it. For now.
So I see, so to that point as well, Tracy put who would represent the individuals. But there would be biases involved. Let's say it's easy to identify academic groups, civil society groups, governments, make a call to those groups, and those groups with their own mechanisms of organization can say, well, these are the 2 or 3 representatives on behalf of. When it comes to an individual, you make a call, electronic and traditional media, and then someone will say, well, I didn't get this in Tobago, in Roxborough, and you enter into it's a strange level of bias. It's not to say that individuals have no input or right into the process, but it makes for strange management and organizational practice. And again, all of these stakeholders have people who act and express in their individual capacity.
I will propose that we deal with it in the glossary, in the proposed glossary of terms. Nate?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Just a suggestion that the group here and those listening remotely may want to consider is, and this may have already been debated before, and I apologize if I'm going over content that's already been discussed, but for computer organizations, you may want to consider the technical community, the term technical community. And the reason is that's more broad than just computer organizations, one. And two, it's consistent with verbiage that's used in the Tunis agenda as it relates to the governance forum. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Yes.
So I agree with Nate. But it is slight, and I agree we should do that, but it is slightly different from the end users we're talking about, because they're not necessarily part of the technical community, right? But the point is very well taken.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I would agree. It's a good concession because it captures the specialist knowledge I'm talking about, and the technicalities involved. So it can incorporate that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
But it's just, I think we needed to, and we need to take account of the informal sector that doesn't fall within all of this.
And that is rough consensus.
Concession gratefully received. We have some text on implementation strategy, measurement and monitoring. Again, we've taken that we've noted that before in some of the discussions between yesterday and today, and the need for periodic review. Tracy mentions here that we need to refer to the international evolution of the concept of, or the evolution of internet governance towards digital governance and digital cooperation. And we did mention that. We will put appropriate text into the introduction. We could add something here as an impetus for maybe a review in the near future, because we're going to have a summit of the future next year, and coming out of that could probably bring some specific actions that we need to take early cognizance of. And that pretty much takes us to the end. So I will ask the audience now, basically, how you feel about all that we've gone through, the adjustments we've made. Are we reasonably comfortable to say that we could go ahead, make the adjustments, and put a final draft 4.0 out there for you to review before we finalize? This is a case where silence means consent.
Tracy said 3.9.
What, 3.9? Oh, 3.9. Oh, I see, instead of 4.0. Okay, good. Yes. Dika.
I have a question about the measurement and monitoring section, because I see it says appropriate information and knowledge society metrics. And I know that the CTU has been using ICT indicators lately. So I was wondering if that is a term that you want to incorporate in that section.
Where is it? High up in the paragraph, low down?
Middle-ish. Third and down.
Third line?
Yeah. End of the third
Oh,
line.
appropriate information and
Yeah.
knowledge society metrics, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the question was?
If you wanted to harmonize that with the terminology used about ICT indicators on the digital society and digital inclusion, or however you prefer that to be written.
Oh, okay, right. Actually, we missed that one. Okay, it says information and knowledge society. So maybe we should take off the and knowledge, because we've been using information society, Caribbean Information Society throughout. We've described the Caribbean Information Society as being knowledge-based, but we're not mixing the knowledge thing. So appropriate information society metrics of infrastructure development, information literacy, and so on. So what would be the alternative wording? Should ensure the sustained production of indicators I don't know. Well, the metrics might be different from the indicators, you know.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and indicators.
Metrics and indicators.
So we maybe how does this look? Yeah, could be. So we might be at a 3.9, someone said, and when we circulate it, we will get 4.0. Yeah. Okay. Now, hearing no comments, we will proceed in that way. We will seek to put this together. Now, the thing is, I'm kind of tied up next week, so it'll have to go into September. And let us say by the end of September, we will circulate the proposed final draft 4.0. I wouldn't even call it final draft. In fact, I could call it final draft, because we're not really coming back together to do anything. But there might be 1 or 2 points that people want to add. And for example, well, no, we'll compose the part about the digital, the citizen participation stuff, right? So that will be in there. So it'll just be a question of a final review. And the intention would be out by September, maybe give October, November for comments to come in, such that by the 4th quarter of this year, we put out 4.2. Yes.
Just one quick question. Do we have any plans or strategies in place to sensitize the non-usual suspects about this framework? I think that was a recurrent theme that we spoke about. There's so many people to whom this is pertinent, they're not in the room. We have a social media influencer. We have others who can distill this in various ways and bring it to speak for the people who should be at the core, but they're not.
Yeah. I guess that is an improvement area for us. We've certainly been reaching out more to, I guess, more the technical community, people who are involved with internet and even e-commerce kind of thing. So this would go through the CTU hierarchy, for example. So it would go to the ministers for ICT in the various countries of the Caribbean. But I think we could take on board the point about shopping it around a little wider, or, raising the awareness of
Well, Nigel, we spoke about during the break, and it can be raised during the open mic discussion about pulling out various aspects of this policy document and doing some blogs and having some engagement through social media and influencers as well.
Yeah.
Right? Because we didn't get to ventilate all of the discussions, all of the topics completely. So it's an opportunity for ongoing engagement, content creation, and public awareness. If we pull out individual issues like digital democracy, like cybersecurity, even the OTT issue and stuff like that over the next 12 months leading up to the next CIGF.
Yeah.
All right, and referring, of course, back to the policy document.
And pointing people to it, and it will be on the CT website. We point people there, and we have a discussion forum on the website. We have an email address that people can send comments to if they want to do that, and such that each time we come back to a CIGF, we'll be in a position to say collate all those comments and see to what extent we adjust the text of this thing. All right, so sounds like we have a way forward. I'm quite pleased. So let me thank all in the room and all online for sticking to this kind of tedious part of the CIGF. All your valuable comments. I think all what we do is help us to enhance our policies around the Caribbean, help us harmonize the policies, and try to build more towards that single ICT space we're trying to put together. That, in fact, is one of the references that will also end up coming out more strongly in here. So thank you very much. We will close our workshop at this point and take a break.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I forgot. We have a host. Sorry.
No worries. So we're going to take a 15-minute break to stretch our legs and come right back promptly because we're going into the last leg of the 3-day conference, which is the open mic. So we're going to be asking you about topics that you want to discuss, and we're going to put it forth for discussion around the room and also online. So join us back right here in 15 minutes. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we have made it to the last leg of the conference. Now, during this next session, we are going to have an open mic forum where we're going to be passing around the microphone for you to discuss any topic that you wish to discuss, and we're going to have an open discussion. Just some house rules for in-person. Just raise your hand, a microphone will come to you. Throw out the topic that you want to discuss, and we'll have that open discussion on it. In the chat, you can throw your questions into the Q&A, and let's begin. Let's have a very lively discussion based on all the topics that we either discussed during the conference or anything that is, you want to get off your chest. I know we have a lot of that. So we have one hand right behind.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tamika Campbell-Carter, and I'm from the CTU. My question is in regards to the AI. What AI tools exist that can assist entrepreneurs in the beauty or cosmetology industry to become more customer-oriented? That's one of my questions.
All right, so we'll give a few minutes for the people online to chime in. So if you can put any tips about the AI tools to help someone in the cosmetology industry, if you could put that in the Q&A section, and we will get that discussion going. What about in the room? Is there anybody that uses any tools right now that could possibly help? You know what's funny about that question? Probably the best person to ask would be ChatGPT. But
I didn't listen to all the discussions, but in between working, I heard one or two discussions, and I didn't hear anything mentioned in regards to that. So that was just one of my questions.
yeah. So can we pull up the chat on the screen so like I could probably read some of the comments that are happening? All right, if you could scroll, if you could open up the chat, so not the questions, but if you can give me the chat, because I'd seen some commentary. All right, so Christopher Chinapu said there are several tools. Christopher, if you don't mind, give us some of the tools that you are referring to. Deidre Williams says, has AI learned yet to deal with brown skin? Well, a further question would be, what type of assistance are you looking for?
Okay, so in regards to eyelash extensions, is it whether it be makeup, your hair, facials?
So are you talking about like generative AI to show like how it would look on a particular person?
Or any tool to enhance a customer experience in terms of, okay, so I've seen a video where there's a robot or something like that in a bar serving drinks. So is there anything in regards to something like that for the cosmetology industry?
All right, so let's see. Shania says a definite benefit would be AI models of varying skins so that the color theory could be easily seen. Jacqueline Moore says it depends on what tasks are important, summarizing research documents like chat, PDF, basic productivity stuff. Generative AI, Canva has AI to support images, Mid-Journey, etc. So I'm guessing it would come down to what exactly. Deidre says, you mean can it show you what you would look like afterwards?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I've seen Canva do some attempts to things like that. We see a lot of filters through social media platforms like a TikTok. I know a lot of people right now, instead of doing makeup, they would actually use the filters that are on Instagram to give them makeup as an example of how they might potentially look. But let's see if there's actually an actual tool that you could potentially use. Carol Roach says, I've seen a friend who's a photographer use some tools, can't remember the name. Jacqueline says, yes, there are tools like that, if you could scroll down. Christopher says, inference AI tools like BERT/YOLO. So we could probably check those out.
Okay.
As a starting point. All right. Do we have any other question in the room or online? If you could bring up my Q&A on the monitor now, let's see if there's any questions from the online community. All right, so Deidre Williams says, going back, I have a very serious ethical objection to being seen as representing a particular group if I haven't had the chance to consult them properly. So I'm not bringing their point of view. I base my input on what I know about. If independent isn't an option in the Dropbox, then I choose civil society, but I certainly don't represent them. They are as diverse and complex as Tracy's millions of individuals. Think about representation. Can you trust academia to be academic? You could probably trust reps from Flow, but that's their job, which ethically they should do. Any comments about that? I see Nate raise some eyebrows. Anybody want to chime in on that? If you're online, you can definitely chime in. You can put it in the chat. We'll pull the chat up and we'll read some of the comments. So we'll give the chat a couple of seconds to see if they want to chime in on that comment.
Yeah, there's a link on AI, some AI related stuff, and I'm sure there will if there isn't right now. There will be.
Cloudbooklet.com. So if
Yeah,
you look
can
up
have a look at that.
cloudbooklet.com, they have an AI tool. Go ahead.
Sorry, me?
Yes. go
Right.
ahead.
Okay. So we had a separate discussion during the break, Chris and I, about these individuals, and the thing is, you know, even for creatives, they're non-governmental organizations. So we're not saying join a government organization or join some group. But and again, to reemphasize that persons come here and participate in their own individual capacity. But I think we need to separate the mechanism through which we organize and support the further development of this forum. That's a separate discussion from who can participate in the discussions and the development of the policy, right? Because even if, as a creative, I mean, like I said, to use that example, or I don't know, car washers. Let's say car washers. That's an end user, right? If you wash cars, you're an end user. So at least, you know, we don't want, you know, necessarily a thousand end users, car washers, to be, in terms of the structure of how we organize it, to bring their individual views. Everyone has an individual view, and I think the point was made that you can show up and speak on behalf of an organization or on behalf of yourself. And I think it is important, though, from a policy development point of view, to have these mechanisms through which individuals can thrash out their thoughts and their policy recommendations and then bring them here as a collective. I think that lends itself to more implementable, you know, actions. So just to go back and to comment on the issue of individuals and their participation in any multi-stakeholder advisory group or similar mechanism that we come up with. Thank you.
Going back to the chat, I see Mr. Shernan Osepa says, I believe we should focus a bit more on the economic aspect of the internet. One way or the other, in the Caribbean, we don't focus much on how to make money with the internet. That is very true. Anybody want to chime in on that? Oh, you got a question? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so hi, my name is Stefan Lewis from the Ministry of Digital Transformation and the Caribbean Youth Internet Governance team. So when we get into internet regulation and government policy, I think that there's a level of divide. So how do we balance between protecting people and upholding the fundamental principles of expression and privacy? Stumped?
We'll give the online community a chance to add to that discussion. Could you repeat the question one more time,
Sure.
just in case, just so people can let it marinate? Go ahead.
So in internet regulation, right, because this is the Internet Governance Forum, right? So while we regulate the internet and government policy, there is a level of divide. So how do we balance between protecting people from harm and allowing people to have free speech and privacy? So upholding the fundamental principles of free speech and privacy and stuff, while still being able to regulate the internet.
I am reminded of part of what we just went through, where we had this long discussion about fundamental rights and human rights and so on and so on. And what I said was the concept was how do we preserve those fundamental human rights, like you're talking about freedom of speech, but protection of individuals as well on the internet. So you will know that it is a point in the policy framework that requires policy development and so on. So it's things we're learning. It's things we have to address. There would be some laws existing now. I mean, we've had here in Trinidad and Tobago a conviction for a case of revenge porn, for example. So you're creating new I don't know if jurisprudence is the right word, but certainly new legal precedences, right, as we go along. And those will develop as circumstances permit. You know, as things happen, maybe you'll see something new that we really haven't covered in the existing laws, and we'll have to work to improve that. So I would say as a challenge, it's something we recognize certainly in the documentation. And maybe we have to learn some lessons from other jurisdictions that maybe have laws that tend to preserve that balance, you know, as it were. But certainly there is a need to preserve the human rights we have in the online world.
Thank you.
Let's see if we got... Jacqueline says that is something that we have to balance with all regulation and policy. So with regard to the internet, I think we just use the ways that we use now for non-internet things. Additionally, almost all crimes that occur online have offline equivalents and can be treated similarly. One of the questions I'll pose to the group is on generative AI. How do you feel about generative AI? Are you on the side where you're seeing endless opportunities, or are you on the side of we need to stop this dead in its tracks because it's going to be a runaway train? So online community, jump in the chat, let us know. When it comes to generative AI, how are you feeling about it? What is your thoughts on it? Are you someone where you want to stop it dead in its tracks, or are you seeing endless opportunities? So Jacqueline says, love it. Massive productivity gains for me so far. Regulation is needed. I think I know why Jacqueline is saying that. Jacqueline is going to create her avatar, have the avatar do all the work, appear in meetings while she is sipping a nice drink on the beach. Carol says, exciting and scary. Che Hoyt says, I think it's great. Create a lot of really cool stuff with it. And we have Keron in the room looking to chime in.
Hi. I'm just sharing an article I recently read on generative AI. The synopsis of the article is aligned with what Jackie and Carol are saying. So these programmers were trying to solve a human issue. It was something to do with the environment and, of course, a human behavior and such. And they had asked the AI what would be the best solution to solve this environmental problem. And the AI, you know, nonchalantly said, well, eliminate the humans. And so, because for the AI, it was the most logical sticking point. The humans are the biggest cause and contributors to this particular problem. So eliminate them. And they said it, you know, without even thinking twice. All that to say that AI has a lot of potential. And where we do have our limitations on a productivity front, we need to think about regulation. We need to think about what happens when things don't go as they should. And I think that second part of the equation ties back to a bigger concern we have about justice in the Caribbean. That's a long conversation, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. The whole issue, I think, is yes, AI is great, but there's huge risks, as we saw earlier this morning, very, very clearly, I think particularly in Mr. Dunkley's presentation. But what's it, sorry? Dunkley, yes, okay. But the whole discussion of a living wage came up even before ChatGPT, and it's something that governments need to get out ahead of, just the same way as they need to get out ahead of ChatGPT and all these other generative AI things, to make sure that the bad actors out there who will use it for evil are controlled, yeah? So the thing is, we had a discussion about AI and its merits and its risks, but I think that the bigger picture, the one when you step back, is how are we going to provide a living wage for people who, a lot of us, because I don't know if people remember, but I said 5 years ago in Nassau, all of the people in the room, that was our ICT week in Nassau in the Bahamas, all of you all are going to be out of a job soon. Hasn't happened in 5 years, but it's coming.
Jacqueline says we need to understand the limitations and use appropriately. Christopher Chinapu added in, I am on the side. We need to manage risk and threats. We need to understand the risk. We need to manage high-risk use cases. We also need standards that support creativity and innovation while managing risk. Carol says that's why some countries are taking a risk approach to regulations. But going into, actually, Chris, you could jump in.
Yeah, I just think that we need to have more intelligent humans in terms of how we use the technology. You know, it has its limitations, but we need to educate the humans enough to understand that what those limitations are and use it wisely, just like any other tool. You know, you don't take an axe and just go and chop everybody else. A tool is made for a particular purpose. And that's why I said the missing component in that policy was education. That is, you know, it springs from all of that, and it would speak to all these issues. So more intelligent humans to counter AI.
To follow your comment and Trevor's comment, one of the conversations that has been popping up throughout the conference when we were talking about AI is not going to replace the humans, but it will replace the humans who don't know how to use AI. And we're seeing a lot of businesses not really upgrading their own processes because they're holding on to old personnel, because the old personnel has not upskilled, stunting the growth of the business. So the question I want to put out to the forum, and then we're going to go and grab some of the questions in the chat, is what do we do as the Caribbean region, where we know people are not upskilling at the rate they need to? What are we going to do? Because we are holding back our own progress to facilitate people who are not looking to upskill themselves. What are we going to do? How do we push people in the right direction? And then what happens to those that are not going to upskill? Because that's a big percentage of people that are not going to upskill to continue to be relevant in this new age. I think Keron wants to say eliminate the humans.
No, the first comment that came to mind is about incentives and incentivizing, and this can go out to trying to retain young professionals in the Caribbean to begin with. I think I will probably hand this over to someone else, but it's really about no, the incentives bit, whether your employer is government or the private sector. I think before we even talk about AI and these things, that has to go through an overhaul of sorts, where our sectors have a better grasp of the world, the global world we're in. So you're talking about old employees, but then you upskill employees successfully at times and you keep them in old models. And that is very widespread. So understanding the evolution from a holistic standpoint and learning how to incentivize, understanding as well that even if you upskill, you're going to lose employees, you're going to gain employees. Sometimes you don't need to see your employees, with all of this going back to normality, you have lots of people fighting. I must see you in the morning because that's how I know you're working. And yeah, you go and you play Minesweeper whole day. So it has to be a kind of holistic approach as to how we analyze and view this use. But yes, those with AI, those who are using it correctly, they have an advantage.
Those are very good points. Jacqueline says, every revolution, people are afraid of losing jobs, but new jobs arise every single time. The Industrial Revolution, Computer Revolution, AI Revolution, same thing, different year or different century. Carol Roach says, COVID should have been an eye-opener for us all. Tracy says, the most optimal users of technology have used it for war. As a reminder, the internet started as DARPANET. Jacqueline says, actually, Tracy, research is often supported by war/international competition, and then we use it in daily life, like DARPANET to internet, MREs to packaged meals, TV dinners, and powdered juice and gravy.
I just want to
go ahead, Trevor.
Jackie's point there.
Yeah.
That I think there's a fundamental difference between the old Luddite thinking, where people were scared of losing jobs, to where what you're looking at coming down the pipe is an intelligence that is going to be smarter than us. Right? There's some people out there who are thinking of trying to make themselves smarter. Right? They will do things to make themselves smarter, and that's one of the dangers we face. But what's happening with generative AI, it's not that it is unthinking, it is thinking, it's getting smarter, and we have to control it, and governments have to control it on behalf of all of us. Governments did a lousy job with controlling social media, and if we're not careful and we don't push them, they'll do a lousy job of controlling AI. And it needs to be controlled, it needs to be regulated because of the huge risks. Yes, there are huge potential benefits, but there are huge risks in my view.
Yeah, when you add in the internet, social media, AI, and a region who has never fully adopted step 2 of the internet, now they're being thrust, all of these access to all these tools and platforms are being put in front of them. It's looking like a big bowl of chaos on the rise. Go ahead.
I'm going to try to phrase myself in the least controversial way possible, but bringing in the principle of no one left behind, how are people thinking to reconcile this idea that it's only the ones who will not use AI, who will not upskill, who will be left behind, right? What thoughts do people have on how to approach that issue?
How do we approach it?
I missed that.
Let's see if anybody has jumped in on the comments.
We have a question at the bottom.
Did anyone want to chime in on the comment first? I think we're also trying to wrap our minds around how to go ahead and approach it.
Thank you. I think we also have to consider, when we say left behind, what we really do mean, economically, socially, what have you. Estonia, for example, has had digital identities for more than 20 years. For more than 10, there are citizens who have never gone into a government office to do anything, because everything is done online, with like 1 or 2 exceptions. But there are still persons in Estonia without a digital identity. After all these years, 20 years, there are still persons who don't get their funds or support from government electronically, and the government makes provision for that. They make provisions to deliver checks and other things to their home. This is what I was told by an Estonian who was one of the architects of the digital identity. So there are ways of including persons who either by choice or by circumstance don't want to be involved or are not involved, don't want to do anything with AI. There are obviously certain jobs that they can't hold or do. There are things they may not be able to participate in. We talked about citizen participation. So not because there's an online petition or a mobile app that everyone is going to use it. So we still have to create multiple channels for persons to walk in, for persons to call in, for persons to write in, and what have you. So the bottom line is that you have to create different channels so that you do create an inclusive society, while at the same time not holding back the development of technology and innovation, which at the end of the day has made our lives so much better in many respects. Of course, understanding that there's a potential for persons to be left out. So yeah, that's my answer is that we still have to be mindful of that. I don't think we have to create a society where every single individual, old or young, indigenous or what have you, is forced into a particular direction with respect to technology and innovation, but you create multiple ways for them to participate in society.
I like that. How do we get past the roadblock of we have leaders who are purposefully holding us back and not allowing the evolution of technology because of their own scares or their own personal reasons as to why? We know technology brings accountability. We don't always want to be accountable, or the leaders don't always want to be accountable. And I think one article that came out December of 2020, that when I read the article, it kind of let me know just where our leaders kind of sit was, I don't know if anybody's seen this article, but the Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, came out and he had said that he was the last person in government to switch from check to direct deposit because he doesn't trust the banks. That was in December of 2020. And if you, as the leader of the country, could come out and say on a public forum that you would prefer to go and cash a check than use the banks, you know, it kind of just lets you know what his involvement or, you know, his drive to getting everything digitally transformed would want to be. Let's go ahead and take some more questions from the chat. Shania Lewis says, given the capabilities of AI to realistically mimic a person's voice and image, is copyright an avenue for protection and ultimately ownership of oneself, given the fine print that is added to AI applications? I think we have a lawyer in the room on AI. Is this something you could chime in on?
Yeah, the thing is with law and AI developing, accountability and liability with AI also developing, and with, as we see with the EU, the proposed AI Act as well, most of it is in the prenatal stage actually, and to get to the point of the stage is that we just have to, you know, everybody. I listened to the conversation and. You know, it's like, it's fair and acceptance at the same time. And time memorial, we have been like that. So, and even with law, with regulation, you could never regulate everything in entirety, because there will always be transformation. There will always be new systems in place, new effects that will come about that you will always have to continue to regulate. So it's not like you will be able to hold on anything at one given point in time. That's why we amend legislation. And that's why we fix it through our parliament and debate and through a democratic system.
Do you think that law can keep up with the rate of change? Because I don't think things have changed at this speed ever in life. Do you think law will be able to keep up?
The thing is that while law is for people, as if people can keep up and people could be moral. And then, you know, the values of humanity changes. And that's when the law changes, because when we look at inclusivity in AI and inclusivity in society, what was perceived as wrong in society back then is now changing now because of the values of humanity is changing. So it all comes down to the human in the loop.
That's a very good point, because we're seeing people, because of technology now, things that you would have posted or talked about online 20 years ago, people are being quote unquote canceled now for a thought process they had 20 years ago, which is absolutely insane. Are you able to bring back up the chat? Let's see if we have any more comments in the chat.
But Tracy actually has his hand up online.
Okay, Tracy, could you unmute?
If we can give him the floor.
And you can come and give us the video as well. We'll put you up on the big screen.
I'll try, but I'm in a very dark space. Let's see. Oops. All right, very dark. See if I can see me. So I'll leave it like that for time being. It's late by I'm in Switzerland. It's 10 p.m. It's late. All right. So a couple of things. One, the Moore's law. So let's get Moore's law is now obsolete. That's pretty much what's happening now. Technology has outpaced itself, and we are at a stage where Moore's law is obsolete. Quantum computing has arrived, and when you add quantum computing with AI, it's not a fearful situation. We're actually at a point of we're at a tipping point. So the point I wanted to raise, I've been trying to raise in the chat, is that the issue is not so much whether AI is good or bad or whatever. It's that we don't seem to be thinking carefully about what people who are using it for not so good purposes are doing. So we've noticed the use of drones in the Russia-Ukraine war. I mean, I'm in that part of the world, so it's very close to where I am. So we've noticed potential cyber attacks on nuclear plants. We've seen the use of AI by cyber criminals to now create very well-worded phishing emails and to write code, malicious code, at the speed of light, quite literally. The issue is not whether or not that technology is coming and we have to work, it's not something that we have to deal with it. The issue for me right now is that we are not, we're sort of blinded and sticking our heads in the sand. We're sort of doing an ostrich look and worrying about AI and jobs and so on. That's not the issue. The issue is that the technology is running ahead at such a pace that before we think twice, and when you add quantum computing to that, we'll be at a state of technology tipping points where anything can happen. Literally, a war can be started with technology. I posted a video about slaughterbots, the recent if human kill. Those are real situations that could happen. So we need to have some fear, and we can't say we're not supposed to fear it. If we don't put enough fear into what we're doing, Sundar Pichai, as I was saying in the chat, he says he can't sleep at night thinking about what's going on in AI, and he should know. Sundar Pichai, for those who don't know, is the CEO of Google, and he is. They're not releasing the large language model they have for fear of it, literally going berserk in the world. So he should know what's happening with AI on his end, and he's fearful of what will happen. So I really think that one of the things that we should be doing is not just talking about jobs and all that sort of ostrich in the head in the sand thing, but start to look at how we can prepare for the future, have a healthy dose of fear, because that gives us energy to move forward. Look at cybersecurity, and we talked about it quite a lot in this session, and from where I sit, I think it's still not looked at seriously in the Caribbean. I've seen, sitting from where I am, seeing ransomware attacks running amok. I'm in a cybersecurity white hat group, and from what you see in the newspaper and what actually is happening, it's like 10 times or 100 times what's actually going on. So a healthy dose of fear. We in the Caribbean need to take stock of what's happening, add our voices to the conversation, because otherwise we're left behind. And maybe we ourselves can provide solutions to these potential challenges. Because we are somewhat insulated, we are not, in the wars, in the trenches. We probably have one of the best opportunities to actually do this. And I'm going to say once again, perhaps now it's time to move from talk to action. Why don't we sit together and develop a real action plan for dealing with these issues? We could sit down and talk in open forum, till we're blue in the face about how great or bad things are. But I would love to see us take action with our governments, with the private sector, with all the stakeholders, and move forward to deal with the challenges and the issues that technology might face, and take advantage of opportunities, obviously, as well. But recognize that technology is running ahead at a light speed. For those who haven't seen what a quantum computer is, or those who haven't visited CERN, have a look. Things are happening. And in the Caribbean, I don't think we understand what really is going on. So keep that in mind. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Tracy. Going over to Mr. Melville.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So I kind of have a follow-up question to some of what Tracy would have just spoken about. So we know that technology is increasing at a very rapid rate. As a developer looking into code as written 3 years ago is already obsolete today, right? But policy takes sometimes 5 years or even 10 years to get implemented. So we are not even keeping pace with the rate of technology. So I'm thinking, how can we leverage some of the gains in technology to increase the rate at which we could produce new policies, right? Maybe adopting generative AI into the processes of policy development. And I know it's a bit of a challenge because we sort of have a consensus-based approach to doing things, and everybody has to speak into the policies. But how can we do that a little bit more effectively and at a massive scale so that you're able to then keep pace with this technology? Because putting out a document next year, you're regulating for what was in the past, right? So that's my question.
I can just offer an opinion. Yeah, I'll just offer an opinion there. I mean, I can have a policy for you on anything in the next 5 minutes, right here off ChatGPT, actually. But and they would be based on best practice as well, international best practice, pulling from what is going on, and you could even make it relevant to the Caribbean. The thing is about policy development is that it has to be consultative. You have to engage stakeholders. All of what we're talking about here today, you have to ensure that people are heard and taken into account. So that is sort of the challenge with respect to policy development and why it takes so long, because you can generate policies based on global best practice, based on all kinds of things, but then they may cause harm to individuals who are not really, who you've not taken into account. And so that's a challenge. But I think definitely still, given all of that, we can leverage the technology to help us speed up at the rate at which we do research to inform policy and to generate regulations and so on, like I said, based on best practice. All of these discussions we're having here are discussions that are also taking place elsewhere, and we can benefit from what has already been said, what has already been done to help us move a bit more quickly. Thank you.
And I think with that, we can end off the open mic forum. Oh, we have one more?
No. Well, I just wanted to make the point. We can regulate all we like. There's some bad actors out there who don't give a damn. Right? They're going to do what they want to do, and that's something we need to take into account. And I must admit, I agree with Tracy that we really are, I think, I'm not an expert, so I can't say, but I do think that we do need to be fearful. And I think we do need to worry about it much more than we do. I think, a lot of people have a glass half full sort of approach to life, which, I agree that's better than a glass half empty. But, the thing is, as I say, it's not the same as with the Luddites and some of the Industrial Revolution. This is a different era that we're going into, where the machines are going to be smarter than we are. And that's the problem.
I would just, sorry, I have to just comment though that, I mean, fear and worry doesn't necessarily generate good policy though, right? So just be careful that, you know, that we respond or react. I mean, you know, there are calls for a pause on the development of technology, really. That's what you're asking for, out of concerns, which you understand. But fear and worry tends to cause knee-jerk reactions that don't necessarily. So, I mean, we have, like, what we're doing here, discuss it from a rational point of view, look realistically at what are the possible harms, and think of ways in which we can address those harms.
Okay, so I'm thinking about an analogy that some of you guys may actually identify with, and that is the world of Hogwarts, right? If you all know about Harry Potter.
Hogwarts, Harry Potter.
Right. So if you compare AI to that of magic, right? You have the world of wizards and you have muggles. We have technologists and we have non-technologists. And in the world of wizards, you have good wizards and you have bad wizards, right? And you can use the technology for whatever you want. But the thing is, in order to counter the people who use the technology for bad, you have to have an equal or greater amount of people who can use it for good. All right? And so part of what we have to do with respect to that is actually, you know, upskill and make sure that people are informed. Otherwise, the bad actors are going to be there anyway, and they're going to learn the technology. And there's nothing that you can do about it because the models could be developed on the laptops. They're in the world, right? You can download any platform, you can build it on your own, and you can create your own AI models. So the bad actors can develop it on their own and leverage it for whatever purposes they want. How can you train a cadre of people who actually for the public good and leverage that? I think that's probably where we need to focus on.
I appreciate the analogy, but I want us to draw reference to what Lika said about nobody getting left behind. Nobody gets left behind because the muggles could never practice magic and will run through quarter mile 33 and a third. We need to remember that that level of training and education and capacity building has to be for the non-technologists as well, because then that's what SG was saying, the fear-mongering comes in and the knee-jerk reactions. Policy development needs to be evidence-based and pragmatic. So just to bring back what Lika was saying about we do need to remember this whole theme about nobody gets left behind.
I think one of the scary parts is that coming from Canada and now moving to Trinidad, culturally in North America, everything is go, 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 upskill, upskill, upskill. You don't stop. That's why we have such high stress. And when we want to run away or get a vacation, we go to a place that has no stress, where everything is laid back. And we come to the Caribbean. And we don't realize that the Caribbean is laid back because the people, the culture, maintains that laid back. Who really cares if you go to work? You're not going to get laid off or fired just on the drop of a dime like if you were in some other countries, right? So culturally, we have some massive shifts that I don't know when that is going to happen, because we, as we say, we like it so, right? We do like the laid back, and it kind of works to our detriment now that we are in the time that we are in, where everything is moving at the speed of light, and culturally we haven't even began. So that's one of my biggest things, where I don't know when we're going to make that shift, where people are actually going to want to participate in the upskilling, and that is really working to our detriment right now.
On that point, I wanted to ask, is a go, go, go culture where everybody is disposable desirable?
No, I actually think we are on two opposite ends of the spectrum. On one side, the North American go, go, go culture is working to our detriment, and the super laid back is working to our detriment. And I don't really know who has figured out how to be in that middle as yet.
And I just have one comment. When we look at the region and not individual countries, there's some countries in the Caribbean that's just much further than others. And you would think that probably the larger countries and are more developed in terms of further ahead than the smaller countries. But then how do we change mindset? Because any change and any development comes with a change of cultural mindset, change of mindset of the people. And we talk about public awareness, we talk about consultations, but that change of mindset. So we consult, yes. Where's the implementation? Where's the, adaptation of what we are putting out there, and not just by country, but by region. So it's a bigger picture in terms of how we look at it, but it all comes down to change of mindset.
So we're going to have to wrap up, unfortunately, right? There will be other channels to which you can, discuss further. But I think, these are all very good points with respect to AI. I think we in the Caribbean have a lot going for us. Really, I envision a world where the bots are doing all the work, right? The AI is doing everything, and we're just liming and relaxing on the beach, right? That's where we're supposed to get. That's the idea, right? Okay? I think that's the utopian world that we are moving towards, and I support that. So, listen, thank you all very much for your contributions this week. What we are in the last session now, we're talking about next steps and so on. But I do want to start by thanking everyone for their contributions thus far, and the chat, the online participants, to our partners that worked with us this week in terms of their financial support to help us pull this off. So ARIN, LACNIC, ISOC, ICANN. I don't know if I missed anyone. I don't think so. But thank you all for your continued support over the years, and for those who signed up and stayed with us for the 3 days. We had some very interesting discussions. We spoke about, in terms of next steps, how do we move from forward with this multi-stakeholder mechanism. We still have to flesh that out a bit, Nigel, but we understand where we want to go. There's a question, how soon can we get there? We have discussions around ICT indicators, cybersecurity and cybercrime. We learned about the LACNIC Leaderist program, and I encourage you to have a look at that and benefit from that program. Very pleased, of course, we should have had someone from the youth in the wrap-up session, but pleased that we were able to pull off the second, that the young people were able to pull off the second Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, and we look forward to their continued collaboration and support, and building really, and building really a strengthening the youth network, so the collaboration and the mechanism that they spoke about for continuing the engagement beyond the forum. AI, of course, dominated the discussion quite a bit. We talked about opportunities for workshops in the future. I was pleased that for the panel on AI, we had persons from the Caribbean. We had certainly the company in Jamaica that's doing some wonderful things. We also had on day 2 the UN Tech Envoy, who spoke about the Global Digital Compact that will culminate next year at the Summit of the Future. Again, there are opportunities for us to make our contributions in that process and to ensure that the GDC serves the interests of small island states. Very happy that we had the engagement of the national initiatives like Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Haiti, and then the CIGF. In the chat today, we spoke about the opportunities for supporting the national IGFs, in particular those countries that have not yet had a national discourse around internet governance. Bahamas was suggested, and there are several others, and we're happy here at the Secretariat to support that development. The policy framework will be finalized and shared through our website and through our mailing list. We invite you to have a final review before we publish the final policy recommendations. And today, of course, we had the hot topics, AI again, going back to a discussion on AI, the digital divide, and how we create a more inclusive society, the issue of fair share. We had the benefit of some views from the internet orgs, and clearly it's an issue that we were not fully able to ventilate, but there will be opportunities again for that. And we can see it's a complex issue, so and it is something that is definitely high on the agenda for our regional governments. Lastly, I'll just say that we also this year, CTU will be participating in the UN IGF in Japan. I mentioned the forum that we'll be having, looking at the issue of the IGF, its development, how it has worked for small island developing states, and how the Global Digital Compact that is being proposed can work in the interests. Those of you who are going, or those who you are participating online, I think it's 12, 13 hours ahead. So we understand the challenges there, but we want to ensure that there's some collaboration, coordination on the ground as far as possible. We encourage you to, as best as you can, maybe you can get your bosses to allow you to work from home for that week, can join us at night, perhaps, but it'd be good to have the support from our Caribbean colleagues. So on that note, I think we would wrap up, and I will hand back over to our excellent host, Keron Rose, who's done a really good job. Thank you very much for your round of applause. Very excellent hosting, and we look forward to working with you on some of the things we talked about, and pulling some of these topics out and creating some blogs and some further discussion with the persons who have not been here this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, you can hold on to that. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed the 3 days. It was packed with dialogues, thought-provoking discussions, and the empowerment to drive meaningful change. Let's dive in and make today count. If we can get... Go ahead.
Sorry, I have to thank my staff for,
Go ahead, yeah.
for the excellent job at organizing. Round of applause, please. Francola, Trevor, and Michelle, Shanae, Richard outside, who's been... Yes, the technical operations, or video, Keron, as well, and your team. Thanks for all of the excellent work. I think it was well received. Online participants, thank you. I think, right, yes, okay, they're approved. So I just had to say that. Thank you.
No, not a problem. In the chat, please let us know how you guys enjoyed the 3-day session. Are we posting the link for the feedback? Is that in the chat right now? Okay, so all participants online, please go to the chat. There is a link that you can fill out all of your, we want that feedback. So hit the link, give us your feedback, let us know how we did for the 3 days. And with that, it is a wrap. We look forward to seeing you in further discussions, workshops, and events just like this. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your evening.